transparency. I think that's kind of where you build a lot of trust with your team, where if you are comfortable saying, hey guys, we're taking a bet here. Like, I know this is a bet, but this is our best guess at what we should be building. And they're fully aware of that and they're committed to that. Then if it doesn't pan out, it's not like a big surprise, you know? And I think that as the founder, as the leader of the organization, you only have so many chances before you lose trust with people.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Hatchpad Insight. I'm Tim Winkler, the creator of Hatchpad, the community for startup technologists. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe for updates on new insight interviews like this one. Today, we're chatting with Shawn Vo, the co-founder and chief technology officer at Axle, a fintech startup based in New York. Shawn, thanks for hanging out with us at the Hatchpad.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, same. Why don't we jump right in? So I always love to kick things off by hearing a quick overview of your journey up to your current role with Axle.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up outside of Northern Virginia and went to school at UVA. And after graduating, I decided to make a move into finance. So coding has been something I've been doing since I was in middle school. But when I graduated, I really wanted to get into the finance space, spent a year at an investment bank in New York and realized that it wasn't what I was hoping for. So I moved to California, joined an insurance technology company there where we were selling weather insurance for farmers. And I learned a lot about building technology for an industry that has been traditionally underserved. From there, I moved back to DC, worked as a consultant for a couple of fintech companies there. And then ultimately, my best friend from high school and I decided to start our own company. So I use a lot of what I learned about financial platforms, building financial technology, serving these underserved industries to build Axle, which today is a financial technology company that helps logistics companies get paid faster. We do this by partnering with freight brokers who work with shipping companies, and the shipping companies hire these freight brokers to find them trucks to move the goods along. So typically payments in this space takes about 35 days or so on average, and we're able to get that down to 1 day.
And as of this interview, what's the size of Axle from a headcount perspective?
Yeah, we're about 30 people now. There's just like new people coming on board every other week or so. So it's getting hard to keep track now.
Exciting time. Seems like it's a high growth period for you all. What's the size of the engineering team?
Yeah, so the engineering team is something that's been fairly small to start. Originally, I built most of the platform myself, and then we worked with some contractors, and then we started hiring some full-time people. So I'd say right now the product and engineering team is around 5, 6 full-time people, and then we have a few contractors.
Excellent. Well, this kind of leads right into the meat and potatoes of the conversation here. So why don't we jump into it? We wanted to have a conversation around building with uncertainty. A lot of startup founders, CTOs, heads of product kind of wrestle with this concept of taking a little bit more of a risk, building with the uncertainty, experimenting with features. Can you talk to us a little bit about this concept and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, by definition, what a startup is a company that's in search of a scalable business model. So there's uncertainty baked into what you're doing. And I think the biggest thing is just having the mindset that what you believe might not be true. So prior to Axle, we pivoted around a bunch. And on one hand, I think that gave me a really great engineering experience because I was able to experiment with so many different technologies. We build mobile apps, web apps, machine learning models, and things like that. And most of that we've thrown away. The main thing is just you have to be cognizant that it's there. And because of that, you have to change the way that you write software. So building software at Axle is probably a lot different than building it at like Facebook or Google.
It's the type of thing where you have to keep your team motivated here and keep them aiming towards that true north. So how do you keep your team motivated when you're pushing out that roadmap and building in uncertain times?
One big thing is transparency. I think that's kind of where you build a lot of trust with your team, where if you are comfortable saying, hey guys, we're taking a bet here, like I know this is a bet, but this is our best guess at what we should be building, and they're fully aware of that and they're committed to that, then if it doesn't pan out, it's not like a big surprise, And I think that as the founder, as the leader of the organization, you only have so many chances before you lose trust with people. So I think being as honest and transparent as possible with the entire organization is key to that. And then when you're hiring people, they should know that they're joining a startup and there's a lot of risk here, but there's also a tremendous amount of upside.
When you start planning around building your product roadmap, how rigid are you on it? Talk me through how you build out your product roadmap.
Yeah, I would say for the first year, our investors would ask for a product roadmap. And I would do my best guess at giving them like a high level product vision and phases of how we could get there. So generally, I like to think about the 12 to 18-month vision, because generally when you raise money, you have runway for about 12 to 18 months. So at the end of that timeline where you need to be in terms of revenue, in terms of product market fit, in terms of users. But everything in between is a little bit fuzzy. Probably up until 6 months ago, we just didn't really have a full-on roadmap. We were kind of building off of intuition, seeing what would happen week over week as we launch features. Now, the way that we do it is we have our 1-year vision. We know where we want to be, and then we try to plan quarterly roadmaps. And typically what plays out is that the first half of the quarter, we're really structured with the roadmap. And then typically what happens 2-3 months in, we're just like, oh, was this feature that we thought of 3 months ago still the most relevant thing that we should be building? And I think that's totally okay, because if you aren't changing the roadmap, that basically means you're not learning from customer feedback. That means your environment isn't changing, your business priority isn't changing. And when you're at this phase, you need to embrace that change and make sure you're learning from it.
Yeah, the finances obviously play a part in some of the roadmap. So when a lot of founders talk about managing tech debt, I'm always curious to know how much this factors into your roadmap.
Yeah, that's one of the downsides of living in this world of uncertainty, because when you build things, you want it to be very reliable. You want to have a lot of testing, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of reliability. And as a payments company, we do 100% prioritize that. Everything that touches our payment rails is fully tested. But when we start thinking about more experimental features where we're like, hey, maybe this is a good idea, maybe it's not, then sometimes it doesn't make sense to invest a lot in terms of making that super reliable when you don't know if you'll be using it in 2-3 months or so. So the way that I typically think about tech debt is it's almost like a credit card, right? You think about it as almost like financial debt, where it's okay to use a credit card. However, you never really want to roll your balances over, because that's when things start getting out of control. So I like to think about our system as a series of subsystems where each one of these might have its own credit card that I'm borrowing against. And if we feel like we're building features on top of one of these systems that is already carrying debt, we'll try to pay that down before we build anything on top of it. So at any given time, I would say there's a level of debt, but I try not to compound the debt over time. Because ultimately, if you're maintaining something for more than 3 months, then it's good for the long-term velocity to just pay down all of these debts.
It's a smart approach. It's almost like your growth from how you had a credit card in college versus like as an adult. You want to make sure you get that down before you start tacking on the next wave of furniture that you move into your car.
Right. And I think that's an important point, because I don't think tech debt is necessarily bad. It's kind of like how debt isn't always bad. Like you could borrow money to go to school, you could borrow money to finance expenses, and especially when they're investments, right? Like when you're borrowing money to make investments, similar to the things we do today, which is we borrow time, like engineering resources, so we can invest in these product features. And it's just about managing it. So I don't think the optimum number is zero debt. It's some level of debt that you can control.